Hi, my name's Robin Ariel Ross St. Clair. I'm reading Pray or Pray, courtesy of the United States government. We're on Chapter 2, and this is Part 4. The scar itself is approximately 2 inches long in the shape of a hook or a J, and about a quarter inch wide, and it must have been deep in order to still be present in the year 2000. It's still present today, actually. Around the same period of time, my adopted mother was bringing me to see a Dr. Padwick of North Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. It seems more than a little strange or coincidental that this pediatrician chosen by my new parents was also the same doctor chosen by social services upon my so-called birth, more likely upon my entry to this country. I was at this time experiencing horrible boils for no apparent reason. They would manifest themselves on my back, shoulders, and arms, never on the face or legs, much like a protective covering had been placed over these areas of my body, or those areas had not been exposed to radiation. No medical testing or analysis was ever done in relation to this phenomenon, and no reason ever supplied to my legal parents as to why or how this phenomenon might have occurred. The reason I believe my parents never questioned the doctors or social workers in this regard was the fear that I would be taken from them. My mother was given a medicated poultice to apply to these boils, which was much more painful than the boils themselves, as the poultice was heated to almost an unbearable temperature, and this was a very painful ordeal to endure. I have always known where all of this originated from: the bright light. The boils occurred off and on for a period of about 2 years, ending around the age of 8 or 9 years of age. And I've since tried to access or locate relevant medical history for myself concerning this as well as other incidents, but due to the death of Dr. Padwick and the fairly new advent of the Freedom of Information Act, which actually works against those individuals trying to obtain records such as adoption and medical, I have not succeeded in this matter. Upon trying to locate my birth records and medical files from the Vancouver General Hospital in 1996, I was told by a hospital administrator that there had been a fire in 1963. Therefore, all of my files had been destroyed. The only problem with this, and that I have with this suggestion, is where then are subsequent history files, say for the years of 1964, 1965? This statement of a fire at the hospital in 1963 is in fact not even true. A friend of mine, a nurse, later informed me that there had never been a fire resulting in the loss of patient files or records. While we're on the subject of hospitals, it is interesting to note that Connie Scott, an investigator for a company called Paper Chasers located in Farmington, New Mexico, found a file in 1977 from the hospital located in that area about my biological mother. The file listed as Cleta June Prey, 1972, noted a vaginal procedure committed on my mom in 1963. This being the exact year listed on my birth certificate from Canada. Was I really born in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada? Connie Scott relayed this information to me by telephone. The investigator never sent the actual physical file or report to me, even though she had promised to do so, and there'll be much more on this subject later. At the age of 6, or at least in the year 1969, I started attending first grade at Frome Road Elementary School. The school was located only a few blocks from my childhood home, located at 1071 Chamberlain Drive, North Vancouver, BC, Canada. An avid reader before I attended school for the first time, as was my biological son Garion, were both able to read and write at a level far beyond our chronological age. Garion was reading at high school level far ahead of his peers, as documented in his school records. Believing everything I'd been told about where I was born and lived, everything was fine for the first year of school, as far as I can remember. The problem began in my second year, at the age of 7 or 8. My adopted father, being an avid fan of hockey, watched most of the NHL games televised on television. I myself hated the game on TV, but found myself being emotionally drawn to the den each time I heard the United States national anthem being played. I would stand in the room until the very last note had died away. Then I would leave to go play. Without knowing why, and believing that I had no memory of my early years, I began to tell schoolmates that I was not a Canadian, but rather an American. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that I'd lived on a ranch, Isn't this all pretty specific for a kid who had no memory? Adding to my story was the fact that I noted to classmates that I had a heritage of Navajo blood and that we had owned horses. Yet I could never explain or remember what had happened to my parents or how I'd gotten to Canada. All of this before I was ever notified by my adoptive parents that indeed I was adopted. As the story grew, so did the testing of other kids as to the validity of my stories. I remember a friend, Craig, who one day asked me if I could prove what I was saying about being a Navajo. Yes, I can. Come with me. I led him to a laundry sink located in our basement. I ran the hot water until the steam was in the air. Then I asked Craig to place his hand in the flow of water under the faucet. It's too hot, he refused, needless to say. I then explained to him that the Navajo do not believe in pain, and proceeded to place my own hand in the running water. I was not scalded nor burnt, and Craig believed me from that day forward. However, the school principal, who was not exactly a small man, he was well over 6 feet, and he always intimidated us kids, heard of the stories I was telling. He immediately had me brought to his office where he strongly reiterated the Born in Canada story. How would he have known? One of the major problems with our educators is they can't think for themselves. Rather, they let others and official paperwork do the talking for them. How many other children had tried to tell their truths and been ignored to the point of death for the unlucky ones? He brought up the subject of my loving parents and how I was hurting them with my lies and stories. How much I'd been hurt even to that young point in my own life. It cannot even be measured. He asked me to stop fantasizing, making up stories, and to put more effort and work into my own studies. He stated that if I put as much effort into my work as I did my stories, I'd be an A student. By the time he finished with me, I realized that I'd better stop or risk his wrath, and so my stories stopped for the present, at least out loud. The unfortunate part of all this is that the stories were indeed true. Unfortunately, I would not be able to confirm this for another 20 years. The first question I asked my biological brother, John Clinton Webster, when I made contact with him in 1995 was, "Where was Mom born?" "Albuquerque, New Mexico," he said, without hesitation. What makes it even more interesting than the sameness of his response to my childhood knowledge is that he was wrong. I ascertained by U.S. government records that our mother Cleta June Prey Webster was in fact born in Lamar, Colorado, if indeed these records are accurate and not being used as a smokescreen. While on the subject of John, it should also be noted that he does not know of the arrangements for the deceased parent's body. John also stated that he did not know the year she died. He stated that she died in 1974. Again, if records can be trusted, she died in 1979 in Salt Lake City, near Hill Air Force Base, within 15 miles of where she was abducted by bright light in 1961. She supposedly died of carbon monoxide poisoning along with my oldest brother in the middle of the day, March 4th, 1979. We will go into this later on in the book as well. It is necessary, however, to note that my childhood memories, and John's belief, coincide in the location of New Mexico. If I was indeed born in Canada, went directly to a foster home, and then directly to my adoptive parents, then I should have had no memories whatsoever of New Mexico, and others more horrific, since they never happened. So then why do I have these memories, and the proof of them gained over the years? Without these memories, the American national anthem would not have been able to trigger subconscious memory to the surface of consciousness. One major question to be answered is, what made the United States national anthem such an emotional trigger for my subconscious memory? I believe the answer lies in the fact that I spent a major portion of 3 years on a military base or reserve where the national anthem was played every day within my hearing. Two other American songs which are very powerful for me are Taps and The Yellow Rose of Texas. And this is interesting since the Ross family resided in Breckenridge, Texas for a number of years during the 1960s. Other information linking my memories with these songs is in fact that my grandfather spent his entire life in the employment of the United States government. He was a member of the Army Air Corps, held the rank of captain, flew P-38s during the war. Both he and his wife, Loretta Anna Ross Prey, were accomplished pilots and marksmen. During the 1950s, they flew a black helicopter off their properties in Los Animas, Colorado. In 1947, Colonel